Hello, everybody. Today we are going to be talking about the history of Denver. So I'm going to be reading to you and talking to you through this reading. We are looking at the Kids Encyclopedia today, and we are going to learn some really great facts about the city of Denver because this is where we live and it's important to know the history of where we live. So I'm going to start reading, and I'm going to stop and have some conversation with you as we go. The history of Denver details the history of the city and county of Denver, Colorado, United States, from its founding in 1858 to modern day. So modern day means today. Located on the banks of the South Platte River, close to the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, Denver was founded in November 1858 as a gold mining town. So that's saying that the city of Denver was recognized as a city in November of 1858, and it was a city that was famous for its gold mining. It was a gold mining town. The gold quickly dried up, and the city moved to become a supply hub for new mines in the mountains. So what that's saying is the gold that was found in the city of Denver actually dried up pretty quickly, and the city actually became a place where you could go to get materials for gold mining that was happening up in the mountains. Denver grew rapidly, becoming the new county seat of Arapahoe County and eventually the state capital. Investors from Denver built a rail line from Cheyenne to western Kansas, which traveled through Denver, bringing new people and supplies. So whenever we talk about railroads, we're talking about a pretty big deal because before railroads, there was no real transportation between cities other than taking your covered wagon and going in between cities. There was no real way to get big materials from city to city or large amounts of people from city to city until the railways came about. So when those railroads came about in Cheyenne and they were going all the way out to western Kansas, traveling through Denver brought people and supplies. New roads and improvement to rail and air travel in the early 20th century made Denver a hub for transportation. So once we got airplanes and we were able to do air travel in the early 20th century, Denver became a place where transportation was coming to. So we had large amounts of people coming in as well as supplies. Until World War II, Denver's economy was dependent mainly on the process and shipping of minerals and ranch products. So through World War II, Denver shipped out lots of minerals and ranching things. We're able to get the minerals from the mountains, and the plains in the east allowed for ranchers to produce anything regarding ranching. With war looming, Denver was in a prime location for more federal activity, being situated far from either coast. So because there was Denver where its location is, it's up against the Rocky Mountains, which made travel through the mountains a little bit more difficult. But Denver, because of where its position was at, it wasn't by the East Coast or the West Coast, it meant that there was a lot of federal activity going on here, which meant that that's government, so government activity. After the war, oil and gas companies fueled a skyscraper boom in the downtown area. With the combined spending of the energy companies and the federal government, Denver expanded quickly. So once we have oil and gas coming in and they are building these massive buildings in downtown, and then you have the federal government doing the same thing, Denver grew really fast. Denver went from having a small urban core surrounded by rural farms to a booming downtown dotted with skyscrapers and surrounded by growing suburbs. The 19th century. Pikes Peak Gold Rush and first settlements. The Denver area, part of the territory of Kansas, was sparsely settled until the late 1850s. That means that there wasn't a ton of people settling here. The Denver area was still part of the territory of Kansas, so it was not yet Denver, Colorado. Occasional parties of prospectors came looking for gold, then moved on. In July 1858, Green Russell and Sam Bates found a small placer deposit near the mouth of the Little Dry Creek in the present-day suburb of Englewood that yielded about 20 troy ounces, so that's about 620 grams of gold. The first significant gold discovery in the Rocky Mountain region. So whenever Green Russell and Sam Bates came out, they actually found a substantial or a large amount of gold in the Englewood area. And it was the first real big gold finding that had happened in the Rocky Mountain region. News spread rapidly, and by autumn, hundreds of men were working along the South Platte River. So the South Platte River still runs right through Littleton, Englewood area. By spring 1859, tens of thousands of gold seekers arrived and the Pikes Peak Gold Rush was underway. In the following 2 years, about 100,000 gold seekers flocked to the region. So once they knew that there was gold here, people started moving here pretty rapidly, pretty quickly. In the summer of 1858, a group from Lawrence, Kansas arrived and established Montana City on the banks of the South Platte River, modern-day Grant Frontier Park. This was the first settlement that would become the Denver metropolitan area. The site faded quickly due to poor findings by miners, and most of the settlers and some structures moved north to the confluence of the South Platte River and Cherry Creek and formed a new settlement named St. Charles. So people were starting to move. When you didn't find gold, then they had to move because gold was their form of making money. This location was accessible to existing trails and had previously been the site of seasonal encampments of the Cheyenne and Arapaho. So we're talking about seasonal encampments of the Cheyenne and Arapaho Indians, the Native Americans. In October 1858, 5 weeks after the founding of St. Charles, the town of Auraria was founded by William Greenberry Russell and party of fellow settlers from Georgia on the south side of the Cherry Creek. The town, named for the gold mining settlement of Auraria, Georgia, was formed in response to the high coastland in St. Charles and gave away lots to anyone willing to build and live there. A post office was opened in Auraria in January 1859, serving the 50 cabins that had already been constructed. So you're only talking about 50 homes at this point. A short time later, a third town called Highland was founded on the west side of the South Platte River. Surrounded by steep bluffs and separated from the other two settlements by a river, it was slow to develop. So here we're talking about the very, very first settlements in the Denver area. So in 1958 is when that group from Lawrence, Kansas came over and started settling on the banks of the South Platte. And that was the first settlement of what would become Denver. And then after that, there was the settlement of St. Charles and the settlement of Auraria. And I know that Ms. Vasquez goes to Metro State, and Metro State is actually on the Auraria campus. So right where William Greenberry Russell founded Auraria, the town of Auraria. So the history of Denver goes back all the way to the 1850s, whenever they started coming here, people started coming here for gold. So gold during this time was a way that people could pay for things that they needed or things that they wanted. So they found gold in creeks, in creek beds that were running down from the mountains. And whenever things started drying up down here in Denver, people actually started moving up into the mountains to find gold, which is why we have gold mines still up in the Rocky Mountains. If you've ever gone up to Idaho Springs, you may have seen the Argo mine, and in the Argo mine, they actually mined gold. So that's one that's pretty close here to Denver.